Welcome to another episode of the Chicks on the Right podcast, where we have our friend and sponsor of the show, Zach Abraham, CIO of Bulwark Capital Management, with us to talk about stuff that's going on in the economic world. And we're just, we're just a couple days out from the big inauguration. I wanted to get your take, first of all. I know this isn't like economic, financial related, but I am scared to death for his safety. Like, do you worry about Trump's safety doing the big pomp and circumstance stuff with inauguration?
Well, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy to say this, but I think you sort of have to be, right?
Right? Like, I want to bubble wrap him and hide him away.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially considering the fact that, we just saw the guy get shot.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I really hope that they look into it. But from I don't have any family members that were Secret Service members or anything like that. But as a guy that's grown up around firearms and military family and all that kind of stuff, that first I don't think that the Secret Service is that inept. And so I think with the increased eyes on it, I would suspect he's probably going to be safer at the inauguration than he's been at any point over the course of the election. But I mean, you live in one of these times where I think that you're probably pretty foolish to say that, anything can't happen. And the other thing that's concerning is, you have a lot of people in this country and kind of unlike any other time, right? I was really bummed out 4 years ago when Biden got elected. I didn't want him to get killed. Right. You got a lot of people in this country that would like to see Trump dead, right? So
yeah,
it's freaky to me. Like I said, my assumption is he's going to be okay because I think the Secret Service is really good at what they do when they're actually doing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Which I would love to see a big expose into that, right? What happened with the Secret Service in that? Yeah, I mean, the fact that you leave a platform like that 140 yards from the podium and nobody's on, I mean, it defies
it's bananas.
Yeah,
it really does.
It defies all logic. When talking to some of these guys, one of the first things they do is they stand at the podium wherever the speaker is going to be, and they start identifying places within a 600-yard radius, and they either put people on those spots or they have people overviewing those spots.
Right.
It's very, very simple. So yeah, I don't think you can say no to anything.
I know it. Well, he's going to be assuming all goes well. And of course, we obviously hope that they do. He's going to be very, very busy because he's listed, I don't even know how many things are his day one priority. There's going to be a lot of stuff that relates to taxes and that relates to getting prices down for American people. Obviously, those are huge priorities. And there's been a lot of talk about him bringing back, tariffs. What is your take on the tariffs? Do you think that these are going to make a comeback? Do you think that there's going to be certain industries that are impacted more than others? How do you think regular Joe Schmoes in America are going to be impacted by his tariff plans?
This is one of those really interesting conversations that that we've been talking about literally since the first time Trump passed tariffs. And I don't know if I've ever heard a conversation that has as much nonsense and like hand-wringing around it, and a total just a decision by so many people to completely ignore context, completely ignore what has taken place. So the first time he was president and he was talking about imposing tariffs on China, I was all for it. People are like, you're going to crash the economy. And I just sat there and I went, whoa, hold on a second. So, right. So China has been suppressing its own cost of labor, and for a long time was suppressing the valuation of its currency. And it is tariffing our goods, right? Answering tariffs with like tariffs, that's balanced trade, right? So it just cracks me up that everybody's like hand-wringing. Is Trump going to pass? And I'm like, what? China already did, right? Like,
right.
What are we talking about here? And I was like sitting there going, look, I don't think that it's going to have anywhere near the negative economic impact that people are saying, because what that will inevitably do is force labor back here. will that make prices slightly higher? Yeah, but it'll be offset with people having different jobs, wages being slightly higher, which will be somewhat of a juice to inflation. But then they're also talking about cutting tax rates. They're also talking about, and I think this is going to be the bigger deal, is cutting a lot of regulations. And the
Mm.
reason I say that is if we look at what's going on right now in Argentina, it's really giving us a path forward. Meaning, I was totally in favor of what Milei is doing in Argentina. I don't think he had any other choice. Having said that, I honestly thought, and we thought, that they would experience significantly more economic pain than they have already. Now, when you cut government spending by that much, it doesn't feel good, right,
Right.
for anybody. But the question was, will the benefits outweigh the costs? At
Hmm.
this point, much to my surprise, it definitely looks like that's occurring in Argentina. And I think that sort of gives you, will it work exactly the same way in the US? No. But I think it gives you a way forward where I think one of the best ways to offset the inflation that will come from some of these things is the regulatory cuts. So I think inflation is going to be stubborn for a lot longer than people want it to be. But I think the way that they're addressing it is the only way that really makes sense. And uh, and if they follow through with that, I think that they probably able to keep inflation under wraps. Like I said, I mean, Argentina has proven that it's possible. Um, and because it's not everybody just, oh, the tariffs make things go up in price. Well, yeah, but they also make doing business here in the United States cheaper too. So there's
Hmm.
offsets, and we've talked about this before, right? Like it's this period of time we live in where everybody wants to analyze like one part of a problem. And they're like, oh, and you're like, okay, well, what's the other part, right? What's the
Right.
offset, right? That's the cost or that's the benefit. Now, what is the other corresponding cost or benefit to the issue at hand? So but now I don't think that they're going to be big problems, and I think
Okay.
I think it's a needed step to get us back to the place where we've got a manufacturing base here in the United States.
What do you think's going to happen to interest rates this year?
So that's a really so that's the thing that we're watching right now. And if anybody wants to understand why the market's currently down 2.5% on the year, didn't finish very strong, hasn't started very strong, that's 100% interest rates. You've got the 30-year U.S. Treasury right now pressing 5%. You've got the 10-year U.S. Treasury back up to 4.6. Um, the what we were concerned about when the Fed started cutting rates was our personal belief was that they didn't have anywhere near the economic data that would justify cutting rates as much as they have. Okay, well, that was our idea going into these first. Now, selfishly, do I want lower? Well, yes, we all
Right.
want lower rates, right? But the question is what are the impacts? What are the implications long term? And so going into these rate cuts, we were just looking around at the economy and saying, okay, the Fed thinks they need to cut rates. We see zero evidence of that, right?
I think wasn't it just sort of pressure from just the culture saying enough is enough already? I mean, we can't take this anymore. And so there
Basically.
was, yeah, I felt like that was the reason for the cuts.
Yeah, I mean, I, deductive reasoning takes you there because none of the other things that I mean, they didn't hit their target rate in inflation. Employment was still historically low when they
Yeah.
started. It still is. None of those things. You're still at record margins in the marketplace, in the stock market. You may think that these rates are going to lead to problems, but to say that you needed to cut at that point, there was just no evidence of it. And what we were saying at the time that our biggest concern was is they're going to cut too early and then have to reverse course, right?
Mm.
The reason that's a concern is because that will give new life to inflation. It will push the inflation battle out further and longer. It will probably make it more pernicious, which means they'll probably, in that event, they probably have to raise rates even higher than they did previously, which would mean they probably would need to do more bank bailouts, which means they'd probably need to do more, bailouts of all other things, because the higher rates go, the more value in bonds drops, right? Which upsets
Yeah,
people's
but
balance sheet.
Trump is already complaining about how high interest rates still are. So there's going to be continued pressure to get them down. So I mean,
Yeah,
like
they're
realistically, what do you think? What's going to happen?
they're stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. There really
Yeah.
isn't much they can do on the interest rate front because and now you see new sanctions going against Russia today, and oil is responding very bullishly. Oil's back up pushing $80 again. So you get an upsurge in oil and nat gas here, and it's going to undo any progress they've made in inflation over the last 12 months, and it's going to do it really quick. And so Trump has got less control over rates than he would like. I actually think that's a good thing. I don't think presidents should be able to make monetary policy because if they did, every monetary policy decision would be a political decision, right?
Right.
But the rate side of it's going to be sticky. I don't really think that they have a lot of good choices. I think that they started cutting too early. I think that they should have let rates. I think they should have let the economy cool more and then responded to economic weakness with cutting, as opposed to what they've done. And the other thing I think the Fed has done is they have not taken market psychology into focus nearly enough, meaning you're at the end or what should be, but you've got the longest bull market in US history, and it's the biggest. You're seeing valuations we've never seen before. You're seeing, literally fake created currencies thrown out there, cryptocurrencies with $30 billion valuations. You're seeing all this crazy stuff. And what I'm saying is, this is not an environment where people are going to take subtle clues, right? This is not an environment where people are going to quit taking crazy risks because the Fed raises 75 basis points, right? And in my opinion, the modern Fed has forgotten about this, is that there is a psychology to the economy. There is a human behavioral aspect to the economy. And to get things to settle down, you need to introduce the fear of loss, right? And what the Fed has done is, even when they get hard, everybody knows the minute something breaks, they're going to go against everything they've said. It's like the parent, right? It's like counting to 3, but you never actually get to 3, So it's that way. And I think that they've got a market, and I know that, but you've got a marketplace that believes the Fed is going to come to the rescue no matter what. And I think that has really muted the impact of their interest rates. So in a lot of ways, I think the Fed has actually bargained against themselves.
Well, and this is one reason that we're constantly telling our audience to prepare themselves for whatever eventuality there is. And that one of the best ways they can do that is, even if they already work with a financial planner, at least try to maybe get a second opinion. And of course, we always recommend you for that. So how can people talk to you about where because they, as you always say, they only get one retirement. So how can they talk to you about where they are, how they're currently invested, and maybe learn about possible things that they could do differently?
Yeah. And boy, there's so many. That's one of the exciting things. Scary time in the world, but a lot of overvalued garbage, but there's so much great stuff that's been left for dead that's paying massive dividends. And anyway, best way to get a hold of us, I get excited. Best way to get a hold of us is knowyourriskradio.com, bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com. We do a daily show called The Daily Dots. You can get that through Know Your Risk Radio or Bulwark Capital Management. Google Know Your Risk Radio, Bulwark Capital Management. We're not hard to find.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate it. Until next time.
Services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.